Hospitals, we're brought there in the back of an ambulance, fresh from a fender bender or for the blessed arrival of a new human. They're places we associate with healing, with doctors in awkwardly cheerful ties, telling us it's probably not the worst thing they've seen that day. But what if I told you, lurking beneath those cheerfully patterned pillowcases, there are dark secrets? Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure the Hippocratic Oath didn't mention maximizing shareholder profits, but somewhere along the way, some hospitals seem to have confused do no harm with charge $20 for a single Tylenol. We're talking about a system where the almighty dollar can influence everything from the treatments you receive to the length of your stay. One of the most egregious examples of this is the issue of overtreatment. We've all been there, sitting in a doctor's office, suddenly feeling every ache and pain we've ever had. And before we know it, we're being wheeled into an MRI machine for a precautionary scan that costs more than a semester of college. And don't even get me started on unnecessary surgeries. Look, I'm all for a good appendectomy when the situation calls for it, but when hospitals are incentivized to perform procedures, whether you truly need them or not, it's time to start asking some serious questions. And then there's the wonderful world of inflated billing. It's enough to make you want to fake your own death and start a new life in the Bahamas. Let's talk about the people on the front lines, the ones who actually answer your panicked 3 a.m. call light. The nurses and medical staff. These are the folks who are literally holding our healthcare system together with nothing but caffeine, grit, and the occasional stolen nap in the supply closet. They work tirelessly, often under incredibly stressful conditions to care for the sick and injured. But here's the thing, hospitals are chronically understaffed. Nurses are stretched thin, working double shifts, skipping breaks, and sacrificing their own well-being to care for their patients. And the consequences of this staffing crisis are dire, not just for the staff, but for patients as well. When medical professionals are overworked and burnt out, the risk of errors increases. A missed medication dosage here, a misdiagnosis there. These mistakes can have devastating, even fatal consequences. Okay, time for a little game of Would You Rather Hospital Edition. Would you rather A, have a picnic in a biohazard zone, or B, spend a night in a hospital? If you answered A, congratulations, you're statistically less likely to contract a deadly infection. Hospitals, those places we go to get better, are often breeding grounds for dangerous pathogens. And it's not just the superbugs you need to worry about. Hospitals have been known to be less than forthcoming about the whole accidentally spreading infections thing. And let's not forget about medical errors. Now, everyone makes mistakes, even doctors. But when those mistakes happen in a hospital setting, the stakes are incredibly high. We're talking about surgical errors, medication mix-ups, misdiagnoses, the kind of stuff that keeps medical malpractice lawyers up at night. Hospitals need to be held to the same standard of accountability. Chapter 4. Healthcare inequality, your insurance, or lack thereof, shouldn't determine your treatment, because these days, navigating the healthcare system feels less like seeking treatment and more like playing a high-stakes game of let's make a deal with your insurance provider, and let me tell you, the house always wins. First up, we've got the insurance discrimination two-step. This is where your treatment options are dictated by what your insurance company deems medically necessary, which, let's be honest, is often code for the cheapest option available, regardless of whether it's actually the best course of action for your health. And then there's the phenomenon of medical tourism, where people travel to other countries for more affordable healthcare. Now, on the surface, this seems like a great idea. But the reality is that medical tourism can create a two-tiered healthcare system where those who can afford to travel receive better care than those who are stuck with whatever their local hospital can offer. Chapter 5. Big Brother wears scrubs, the privacy nightmare of patient data. You know that little piece of paper you sign at the doctor's office, the one with the microscopic font and the legal jargon that would make Shakespeare's head spin? Yeah, that's your high PAA form, and theoretically it's supposed to protect your medical information from prying eyes. But in the digital age, patient privacy is about as secure as a screen door on a submarine. We're talking about a world where your most sensitive medical information, from your embarrassing rash to your family history of weird toes, is floating around in the digital ether, ripe for the picking by hackers, data brokers, and anyone with a Wi-Fi connection and a penchant for medical voyeurism. Now, I'm not saying that all hospitals are out there selling your medical records to the highest bidder, although, let's be honest, some probably are. But the reality is that data breaches are becoming increasingly common and hospitals are prime targets. And even if your data doesn't end up on the dark web, there's still the issue of unauthorized access. How many times have you been in a hospital room and overheard a doctor discussing a patient's private medical information in the hallway? Chapter 6. Life, Death, and Ethical Grey Areas, Tough Decisions in Emergency Rooms and ICUs. We're tackling the big one now, folks. The one that keeps ethicists up at night and makes you question everything you thought you knew about life, death, and those little mints they leave on your pillow. We're talking about end-of-life care and the ethical quagmire that comes with it. Now, I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong when it comes to these incredibly personal decisions. But what I will say is that the healthcare system doesn't always make it easy to navigate these sensitive situations with compassion and clarity. On the one hand, you have the issue of prolonging life at all costs. But sometimes keeping someone alive means subjecting them to endless medical interventions that only prolong their suffering. Chapter 7. The Forgotten Patients, Neglect and Abuse in Hospitals. Let's talk about the invisible patients, the ones whose voices are often silenced by their circumstances. The elderly, the disabled, the mentally ill, these are the patients who are most vulnerable to neglect and abuse. Within the healthcare system, they're often overlooked, dismissed, and treated with a shocking lack of dignity and respect. One of the biggest contributors to this problem is, you guessed it, understaffing. When hospitals are short-staffed, it's often the most vulnerable patients who suffer the most. Basic needs like hygiene, nutrition, and even medication management can be overlooked or delayed, leading to serious health complications. But it's not just about neglect. Abuse, both physical and emotional, is a very real problem in hospitals, particularly for patients who are unable to advocate for themselves. Chapter 8. Big Pharma's Grip. The influence of drug companies on your prescriptions. The pharmaceutical industry, those benevolent purveyors of life-saving medications, working tirelessly to alleviate human suffering. Or are they? Because behind the glossy brochures and the heartwarming commercials, there's a darker side to Big Pharma. One where profits often trump patient well-being and where the line between treatment and marketing gets blurrier than my vision after a long day staring at a computer screen. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the opioid crisis. Now, I'm not saying that pharmaceutical companies invented pain, but they certainly found a very profitable way to treat it. We're talking about a decades-long campaign to downplay the addictive nature of opioid painkillers, aggressively marketing them to doctors and patients alike. And it's not just opioids, from antidepressants to sleep aids to medications you didn't even know you needed. Pharmaceutical companies have a vested interest in getting us hooked on their products. Outro, the price of health demanding better from our hospitals. So there you have it, the dark underbelly of the healthcare system, laid bare for all to see. We've journeyed through the murky waters of financial incentives, grappled with the ethical dilemmas of end-of-life care, and confronted the uncomfortable reality of patient neglect and abuse. But here's the thing, while the problems we've discussed are serious, they're not insurmountable. By shedding light on these dark secrets, by demanding transparency and accountability from our hospitals and healthcare providers, we can work towards creating a system that truly prioritizes patient well-being.